Hello, listeners. Welcome to Brewing Talks, a show that focuses conversations around marketing, branding, ideas, and so much more. Well, I'm your host, Madhulika, and I'm so glad to welcome you to one another exciting episode of ours. So we've been talking and conversing on various topics, be it about branding, be it about the challenges that a marketer faces in today's time, a lot about digital marketing, and so many more topics that's coming up down the line. Today, I have a very, very interesting topic to cover about, and I think it's now become a very integral part of our life because, we consume it literally every day, be it in any form. So before I come to the topic, and I'm going to introduce you to today's guest of the show, and that is Mr. Saugata Bagchi. Saugata, welcome to Brewing Talks.
Hi, Madhulika. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So it's going to be a very, very exciting conversation with Saugata because he comes from a very, very rich experience and a background in the area of content, experiential marketing, and branding and digital. He's currently the global head of content, digital, and experiential marketing at Tata Communications. And besides that, he's been in this marketing, content, and in agency experience industry as well for many, many, many years. So I think listeners are eagerly waiting to listen to what Saugata has to say about the content, the different forms of content, and what is it about content, and how are what do brands and the marketers needs to really understand about shaping the content in a way that connects and resonates with the audience and the consumers. So over to you, Saugata. So before we sort of deep dive into this topic today, I want to understand a little bit about your journey, and how you look at content in today's time, over a period of time, how it has shaped up as such.
So first of all, before we start, the way you said many, many, many years, I'm not sure it landed right.
Okay.
I've been around the block a few times, but not as many times as probably you.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Right.
The reason I said that is, my journey has been very interesting. I actually started off from in a very different world, which was the world of pharmaceuticals and medicines, basically.
Okay.
I started off as a sales rep in that industry.
Okay.
And from there on, the more I met people, the more I understood what the organization I represented was trying to say vis-a-vis what the customer or the doctor or the wholesale distributor or various cogs in the distribution and the overall business value chain were understanding. Sometimes there was a big gap. The company wanted to say something, the understanding on the other side was completely different, and as I kind of kept on interacting more and more with people and across different parts of the country and also a few times internationally, I understood that the way we communicated to the different audiences who were intended recipients of the communication had to be very different. One size didn't then and even now doesn't fit all, right?
True.
So that inquisitiveness, that curiosity actually guided my journey to move into the agency side of the business.
Okay.
And there I've been fortunate enough to be an early mover into the field of digital communications. I wouldn't call it digital marketing because it wasn't so much of marketing as it was communications at that point in time. And from there on, one thing led to another, and stayed with digital, moved into different roles, grew up the ladder, and finally, about 5-6 years back, joined Tata Communications and got into another different world, which was the B2B side of communications and marketing.
Okay.
So yes, I've been around the block for quite a few years, as you rightly said, and have seen this practice. I won't call it a business, but this practice evolving and becoming more customer focused, getting more customer centric, and getting more about talking about what the customers want to hear, what need gaps are we solving through the product that we are putting out in the market, what is the promise that we are making as a brand, and focusing on those aspects rather than trying to talk only about what the brand wants to say. Right? It's a healthy mix. It's a healthy evolution, I would say, that has happened. Also, I think we should mention the fact that the customers over the years have become far more discerning and demanding at the same time.
Right.
Given the plethora of brands in the same category which are available today, a customer has the choice to make an informed decision, right? And with the spending powers going up, right, and they also know that, since they have the power to spend, it's important that we stay true, we stay
Right.
honest,
Right.
and we tell them stuff which is relevant to them and not what we want to say. I think
Correct.
that's something which has been under discussion for a long time. But I think over the last few years, especially after the pandemic, I think that transparency in communication is something that has increasingly become par for the course, rather
Okay.
than a few brands doing it here and there. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right.
where
I think so. Let me sort of let me understand this viewpoint a little more. When you said that it's a lot about authenticity today, and brands can't just get away by just simply focusing on what they have to sell. So how do brands really understand this a little better from what consumers really want to know? I mean, what are the areas of content that they really would be interested in? Is it like completely backed by research, or there's something else that needs to get into understanding this and setting it right for marketers to get the right output from the any activity that they do, which is content driven particularly?
see. Let me put it this way, right? Content is a delivery device.
Hmm.
Okay, it's a delivery device for
Yeah.
the message to get across to the customer or the audience. Rather, I shouldn't use the word customer here, but to the audience in a format that is conducive to their content consumption habits. Right. I think to your point, the understanding of the consumer, the understanding of the audience, right? Their proclivities, their leanings, their stated or unstated needs, whichever way you may want to put it. That is something that has increasingly taken center stage, right? And has
Right.
gotten broad based, if I may, right? If you ask me 15, 17 years back, if you were to talk about testing a piece of content, let's say those days it used to be mostly television commercials
Yeah.
or print ads, right, or billboard out of home hoardings. If you spoke about testing that piece of content out, people would do a focus group, right, wherein they would have 5, 10, 15, 20 people of that particular intended target audience getting into a room, getting exposed to the content, giving their views, and that would have to serve as a kind of an indicator for how the rest of the audience would react to it,
Right.
right?
Right.
With the advent of the internet and the exposure that people have to the internet and the consumption of the internet going up, I think that has become far more easier right now. Right? What used to be desk-based research earlier, actually in many industries has become the primary mode of consumer insight mining and researching. Right? You can run polls, you can run various other practices to find out what your audiences are thinking, what kind of content they're consuming, what are their browsing habits, what are the kind of, and there's also this thing about intent. Right? What is the
Got
kind
it.
of intent that they're
Yeah.
demonstrating about a particular category, about a particular brand? So there are branded keywords, there are unbranded keywords, and so on and so forth, right? So the option to a marketer today are unending.
Right. Right.
It's more a function of what the marketer decides is the best way to understand his or her consumer,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And translate that understanding into different audience cohorts and create communication and content that actually delivers the message or solves the problem or answers the question that that particular cohort is looking for, right? The closer the marketer can get to that, the better their engagement would be, their stickiness would be, the responses to their messaging would be, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it's become more
Okay.
of a science right now,
Right.
rather than if I may, at the risk of sounding a little condescending, we say that it's more of a science now rather than a gut feeling, which it used to be, say, 2 decades back.
True, true. But you just said that the closer the marketer can get. So in the sense, so if it is so scientifically backed up, so how do can't we be very accurate in really understanding what the consumers want to get out of a brand or a marketer, right? So, I mean, how will a marketer really know what is going to work? Is it more of a trial and an error kind of a situation here? Or I can be very accurate and very confident if I'm going to spend lakhs or crores of budget for a particular campaign or an activity, which is very highly content driven or using content as a key format in different forms. can I be very clear and sure about the, end outcome that it is going to give me out of this whole exercise, or the effort or the investment that I'm making?
Okay, so you actually asked me two questions here. I'll try and answer them individually, right? So, can a marketer be confident that the content that they're putting out has a high chance of working with the intended audience? The answer is yes. There are
Okay.
various ways of doing that, right?
Right.
There are various ways of doing that. Something as simple as an A/B test, wherein you put out two different messages in two different or multiple content formats and test out before you launch the formal campaign, in terms of which is driving greater engagement, greater stickiness, and so on. Something as simple as that. And there are various other ways, like you can do dipsticks, you can do polls, you can do surveys, testing out different forms of content and messaging that you're putting out. So that will help you be pretty sure that data is telling me that yes, this content has a high propensity to work. Right? Now, when you talk about an outcome, right? An outcome is actually a sum of multiple things, right? So, or sum of many things rather, right? So, an outcome can be defined as whether there's an uplift in sales, where there's an uplift in awareness, where there's an uplift
Right.
in top of mind recall, where there's an uplift in the right kind of association that a brand wants to create about itself, and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
So content is not, and I don't know if we are going to have international audiences watching this show, but even if they do,
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll associate with the word Brahmastra or the silver bullet, as we call it, right? Content is not either of the two.
Correct.
Right? Content is, like I said, it's a delivery device to get your message across.
Right.
So you can be sure that what you're saying has a high propensity to resonate. With regard to the outcome, content is one of the great influencers in delivering the right outcome, but it's unfortunately not the only silver bullet which does the job. There are various other elements: media placement, selection of media, time of the year, and so on and so forth. Right. So that's where I would leave it. Hence, I said you asked me two questions. So
absolutely. Correct. So, Saugata, from your experience, can you think of whether it's a recent past or some years back that you must have worked on a particular activity or a initiative or a campaign that gave you the desired outcome? So what went into it? A little bit like a case study kind of a conversation that we can have here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I was very fortunate back in my agency days to work on the digital leg of a campaign called Touch the Pickle.
Okay.
Right? Touch the Pickle. It was a campaign which was basically run by Whisper, which is P&G's brand of sanitary pads.
Okay.
Right? It was basically talking to women, and obviously, and women of various ages.
Right.
And the idea behind the campaign was to actually bust the myths that surrounded this whole phenomenon or whole occurrence of women going through their menstruation cycles. Right? So the reason the campaign was called "Touch the Pickle" was, as a lady, you would be probably familiar. That growing up, our women in our house, it's our children, it's our wives, sisters, mothers, have all been through this journey. Wherein things like don't touch the pickle, it will go bad.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Don't go to a temple.
Right.
Don't do this. Don't do that. All of which are completely baseless and myths in their own.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So this was a campaign which obviously had a television leg. It had the overall ATL spread of print and out of home and everything which went in. But digital, right? What we were able to do was actually spark real conversations, right? Spark real conversations where we had audiences of various age groups, right? Especially even minors who had just entered this phase of their lives, right? Coming in and asking questions about what was the right thing to do, whether to believe what was being done, what was being said, or find their own ways of going about things, dealing with the various complexities that come during those 4-5 days of the month, the tiredness and basically the pain in some cases, and the overall feeling of the body changing, especially for the youngsters, right? The body changing, them coming to terms with it. Working women having their own set of problems. Women at home unfortunately not with the right kind of means to make themselves comfortable, or living in large joint families where they had to do a brunt of the work, and various different segments of the audience, cohorts of the audience,
Correct.
coming together, asking questions, sharing their own experiences, what worked for them, and getting more learnings as the campaign progressed.
Mm-hmm.
And over a period of time, we actually had celebrities joining us of their
okay.
own volition. Right?
Okay.
We didn't go after any celebrity asking them to join us through a paid effort or paid initiative.
Right.
But because of the momentum the celebrities saw that this campaign was generating, they actually came and joined in of their own volition.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, what started off as a brand campaign actually became a social movement.
Correct.
And fortunately, that same year, the campaign was also awarded a glass lion. It was the first glass lion, if I'm not mistaken, at the Cannes.
Oh, okay.
Such was the power of that messaging and that campaign, right? So that's what I'm saying. So if you ask me whether it was the content that did the job, I would say to a large part, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the messaging, it was the formats, it was the choice of platforms that we embarked upon or made, and it was the whole authenticity with which the brand approached the problem. Right?
Got it.
Nowhere did we push the message that a sanitary pad is important. It was something that the audience themselves said. That don't use cloth, but use a sanitary pad. It has hygienic requirements, hygienic benefits, and so on and so forth, medicinal benefits, and so on and so forth.
Right.
In fact, we also started a second leg of the campaign, wherein we put the same messaging into the rural parts of India.
Okay.
Which is where the awareness was actually and supremely needed because of various reasons, right? So social reasons, financial reasons, various other reasons, right?
Right.
So we took the campaign there, and there again to your point of the authenticity and the content being relevant, we actually went low tech of the highest order that you can imagine. That we worked with SMSs because there at that point in time, I'm talking about 2014-15. At that point in time, the smartphone penetration in the country was still happening, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities.
Correct.
Majority were 2G phones or probably slightly upgraded versions, but it was not the 4G, 5G penetration that we are seeing today, with everybody running with a smartphone and so on. It was mostly simple phones that people were using with small screens. Right. There's a lot of vernacular messaging. We depended heavily upon SMSs, right? And various other low-tech ways of communications and delivering content, which again give us a very, very strong, engagement, give us a very strong, bond that was built with the target audience.
Was there a regionalization of the content created to reach out to these kind of audiences who will resonate with more of their local languages or something?
There was. So like I said, we went vernacular, right?
Okay,
we went vernacular, and we created messaging because also the beauty of content is that it's very flexible, and if a marketer really knows their audience well, right, the same content can be rewritten, reimagined, and delivered to deliver messages which are very unique to a particular region.
Right.
So a particular message which would resonate well with the audiences, let's say in the western part of the country, would probably not work that well in the southern part of the country, and vice versa.
Absolutely, agree. Yeah.
So the power of content is, the power of communication is that using the same format, but just changing a few words here and there, as long as you understand your consumer,
Correct.
you're able to deliver the message effectively and in a way which actually makes an impact.
Right.
And you're able to deliver it with the right frequency through the right channels. Right?
Absolutely.
And hence, stay true to what the brand stands for, why you're running that campaign, what problem you're trying to solve, and all in all, feel good about the fact that you're doing something which is relevant and meaningful, and not shouting from the rooftop just because you're supposed to or that's your job.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that's the real power of content, if you ask me.
Absolutely. So you spoke about this wonderful campaign, in fact, because it was not just about product and a brand, as you rightly said. Maybe it started like that, but it was a very powerful social message. And I think it was also about breaking the stereotypes and the mindsets that been in existence for last so many years and centuries, right? Which is not easy. But even if this initiative or a brand message has made a little bit of a difference, I think it's worth all the effort that, it's been put up.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
And I think I can, yeah, please tell me.
Sorry, like they say, right? Every drop
Absolutely.
contributes to making an ocean, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, in a country of 1.4 billion, even if we were able to impact, 1.4 thousand women's
Absolutely.
lives
Right.
or kids' lives, I think
Right.
the job was done, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
these are things which actually travel through word of mouth, through practice, through behavior,
Correct.
and and because every brand has finite budgets, right?
Right. Right.
So the fact is that if you're able to drive this kind of a movement, drive this kind of a behavioral shift, if I may,
Right.
right,
Right.
which then kind of moves on its own steam, word of mouth, micro influencers, peer to peer communications, behavioral changes, and so on and so forth. I think over a period of time, because as you rightly said, something which has been in existence for centuries
Correct.
will not get changed overnight.
Of course not.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the first step in that direction, I think, is a big step. Right? So I'm
Absolutely.
glad that the brand actually put themselves out there, and said what they said and did what they did, and I'm really glad that I was a part of that entire movement and as a motion, and as a father of a daughter, I
Right.
feel that I've done something worthwhile
Absolutely.
in my career as a marketer.
Absolutely. And I think we can literally think of a lot of brands, right? Even if it's an aerial brand about this daag achhe hai concept, where you're letting go people to do what they want to do. It doesn't matter, right? If the person comes back dirty, because there's some product that can take care of it, sort of a thing, Similarly, I'm thinking of this one very recent campaign that's come out of Adani Group. I'm not sure if you've seen it. They've run a television ad on this, which focuses on पंखा पहले आता है and बिजली बाद में, पंखे से पहले बिजली से पहले पंखा. So which is basically talking about the windmill power that's, that can generate electricity in thousands of villages in India. How Adani is actually contributing to that cause. So it could be also looked at as a little bit of a CSR agenda of what this company is contributing. So I think we have many such, examples that we can suddenly, with this conversation, can think of, where brands have gone a little ahead of not just focusing on what they want to deliver from their categories or industry product specific thing, but it's also about how they can make a difference. How they can shape people's life for the better, sort of a thing.
Absolutely. Since you mentioned Ariel, another PNG brand, one campaign which on the same lines of social messaging, which Ariel again did, was share the load.
Right? Share the load. Yes.
I remember. Right?
Correct.
In today's progressive times, the woman is as much of a breadwinner as she is a homemaker.
Correct.
It's a partner spouse's responsibility to actually share the load and not expect her to burn both ends of the candle in terms of going to work as well as running the household.
Right.
So that was another very strong message. You're right. There are multiple campaigns around sustainable sources of energy, the one that you mentioned, which actually are appealing to the right senses of the audiences, because the fact that we are living in a very volatile time, right? Our fossil fuels and other traditional sources of energy are all going, are disappearing fast. So if we are not mindful, and people think that what will happen? I am just one out of 8 billion people on the planet. Right? What happens if I don't switch off the fan? Or what happens if I don't turn off the light? Or I let the water flow even when I'm not using it, right? The fact is that every small gesture counts. Right. And that's again the power of content, to be able to make the individual understand that every gesture that you make, actually counts towards or contributes towards a larger cause or the larger good.
Right.
So, so it's evocative, it's emotional, it's powerful, and at the same time it's lethal. Right. If not used properly, it can lead to catastrophic outcomes as well. And we have seen this happening through this whole social media not being managed properly or delivered properly, being put to various outcomes and so on and so forth. Right.
Got it. Right.
So I think as practitioners, we should keep both ends of the spectrum in mind. We have seen various unfortunate incidences where, because of this whole WhatsApp university, as it is called, hate mongers spreading rumors around, and that's also content. Like I said, it's a delivery device.
Right.
So that's also content.
Absolutely.
So And therefore, it's as practitioners, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are absolutely clear and sure and careful about what we are putting out there, because people, audiences, consumers, everyone is free to interpret it in their own way.
Correct.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Now we focus so much on the power of content, which is sort of, we all agree with. Now let's talk about today's era where there's heavy focus on digital. There's a heavy growth of digital. I mean, OTT platforms that we have seen. Talk about Netflix of the world, Amazons of the world, or whatever you name it, right? So, how is this content shaping up with the birth of these different formats that are existing? Also, if you could also tell us about what kind of formats are really getting more popular and has a good success ratio in the way, when it is being used to, propagate or populate a certain type of a content. So would you like to give us some insights on that?
Sure. See, with the rise of OTTs, right, and not only the names that you took, but also the homegrown OTTs in a country like India, right, where you talk about the Z5 or the recently christened Jio Hotstar and others.
Yeah, Jio Hotstar. Yeah.
I believe the biggest change that has happened in the way we have been telling our stories and we've been getting messages across is the degree of authenticity and the degree of relatability.
Yeah.
Right. So content is not anymore only for the elite. Or content is not only anymore the one size fits all. When I make a movie, I put it up on television, and whether you like it or not, it's what you got. Right? Today, the creators are creating content for various segments of our society, and the messaging that is being landed there, the messages that are being landed there, are very specific to the segment that they're targeting.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Also, the other thing that is happening is we are not afraid to call a spade anymore. Right. There are programs like I don't know if you've come across them yet, but there's something called as a Black Warrant, which speaks openly about how the hard jail was run in the 80s.
I've seen that. Yeah. Very interesting.
How our prison system has evolved, right?
Correct.
If you ask me 15 years back, would we have the the tenacity and the guts to actually call something out in such form? Probably not. Right? That's what the OTT has given to us.
Right.
But at the same time, what has also happened is people have taken certain liberties, which can be relooked at, whether it is in terms of the choice of words, choice of language, and the way intimacy is being portrayed on the screen, and so on and so forth. Right? If it is integral to the story, I'm all for it.
Right.
Putting it there for the sake of it, I think needs to be relooked at and rethought about.
Right.
So I think storytelling has evolved. People have become a lot more bolder, a lot more honest with the way they have been communicating. They have become, their understanding of the different audience segments who are their consumers has evolved. Right, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, they have become bold enough to actually take a stand and say things the way they see them. Right, and that's, I think, reflecting in the way the stories are being told and the way the audiences are consuming the content. But at the same time, they need to be also judicious and mindful, because let's agree that India still is mostly a one TV household, or in some cases a two TV household, but mostly a one TV household. And the mix of audiences who are watching the content is not only of a particular type. It spreads across different age groups, different generations, different genders, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So, keeping those things in mind and making the content appropriate, I think is something that is that needs to be given a little more thought. Is
right. What I feel. So, when you were saying this, we were talking about this earlier campaigns also. Now we are focusing on, how these kind of contents also getting popular in, OTT platforms. Is it an era of rebels currently? Are we seeing, so I mean, I don't mean rebel in a negative way. So what I'm trying to say is are we living in an era where there are people wanting to break the stereotypes in some form or the other? There's like a strong energy that we are sensing through our advertising of brands or through its content, movie or filmmaking happening on, for OTT platforms or otherwise. Is there a lot of strong desire that people have suddenly, have this, that they just don't want to believe in what has been happening over the years. They just suddenly want to do something different, something that, makes them feel more connected to themselves. You know what I'm trying to say? So do you think this is an era which is very strong currently, and that is why everything that we see is sort of going in a very similar direction?
See, I think it's a function of, where we stand as an economy, as a country.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you see, and if you speak to people who live in the Western worlds,
Mm-hmm.
as Indians, we have always found them to be a little outspoken, not caring too much about what they're saying, speaking their minds, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask me, I believe that's a function of the kind of economies they have lived in, the kind of lifestyles that they have had, the kind of purchasing power that they have had, which has enabled them to take decisions which they have wanted to take.
Right.
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 I think India, because of our growth, the way our economy has been progressing, the way our disposable incomes have been increasing, the way our generations today have had global exposure. I think the way we are expressing ourselves today is a combination of all this.
Right.
Right. First time when somebody would go abroad and they would come back, if you ask me, if you look back about 10, 15 years ago, right? First time somebody would go abroad and they would come back, and by abroad I mean the Western worlds, right? If you ask them what did they find different, or what was it, and apart from the usual weather and cars and big buildings and so on and so forth, then most of the people would actually say people there just speak their minds.
Yeah.
Which in India, we never thought we could do.
True.
Right? But I think now that has started seeping into our society, right?
Right.
With the degree of, with the levels of education that we have had, and all these other factors I mentioned earlier, right? I think we as a society are becoming far more expressive than what we were a decade back, even. Right? We as a society are becoming, and I think you mentioned this while you were putting the question out, we are becoming more aware of who we are, what we want for ourselves.
Correct.
We are becoming more aware of certain things which we probably knew that we don't agree with while we were growing up, let's say. But now we have the power to call it out, call a spade a spade, and hence the share the loads and touch the pickle and various other campaigns that we see are coming out, right?
Right, absolutely.
I mean, as a woman, you'll agree with me, right? Which
completely
woman actually want to go through the stress at a time when her body herself is under stress?
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
20 years back, women didn't have the voice to call it out. Now they do.
Yeah, I mean, major shift in the way, even when a girl or anybody in the family used to go out in the market to buy a sanitary napkin brand, for even simply putting it out to that shop wala was like, a big task, like there was so much of hesitancy to even pour out a name ki mujhe ye chahiye, sort of a thing. But today the whole situation is like mindsets have completely changed from both the sides, from the shopkeeper side as well as from the person who is buying it.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, think about it, right? So, and to your point, even when the shopkeeper would hand over the sanitary pad,
exactly.
They would either wrap it up in a newspaper or would put it in a black colored plastic bag and something. Basically, hide the fact that they're buying something which is a part of life, right? It's a part of our anatomy, right? And not only that, if you look at any other product related to either personal grooming or intimacy or anything of that sort, right? It's all very hush, very taboo.
Correct.
I think those are mindsets, and this is just an example. There are various other things that have changed.
Absolutely.
For example, there is data which says that women today are one of the leading segments who are buying SUVs.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Sports utility vehicles, right? Something which was always a symbol of masculinity and male aggression and power and everything. Women today are stepping out in droves and buying SUVs.
Wow.
Why?
Okay.
Because they have the choice to express themselves.
Yes,
right?
so I'll just interrupt you here. So, just last episode that we had of Brewing Talks, the discussion was on about automotive industry and how advertising has been in this sector. So, I did bring up this point that why in most of the commercials that comes out in the market when it comes to buying a passenger vehicle or a car brand, why is mostly the masculine element attached to it? Why is there's always a man driving away on a highway with his wife sitting next and a baby sitting on the back seat? Why can't be actually a woman doing just the reverse role where she actually takes out a car in the night with a group of her friends and goes out and you just sort of said something which sort of justifies this whole point, where we literally have more of women coming out in the market to buy SUVs. So why can't a woman be actually the hero of that brand's advertising? Why can't we actually start thinking more on those lines? I'm not saying it's not happening, but I think it's happening at a very minuscule level at this stage.
See, I think you're right. I believe, though I'm not the authority on this subject, but I believe as a practitioner, right, the aspect that is being communicated through these advertisements is the fact that a woman is a great influencer and in many cases a decision maker, right?
Right.
And let's face it, driving is a strenuous activity. So maybe, and I'm just hypothecating this point here.
Right.
Maybe the reason the woman is in the passenger seat is because she's the one who's enjoying the luxury and the comfort of the ride, right, and having a good time. While it's a man who's kind of doing the driving because well, let's put it that way. We have been a patriarchal society for a large part of our existence,
right,
barring a few parts of our country. So, like I said earlier, something that has been in existence for centuries will not change overnight.
Overnight, yeah, absolutely.
Right. But these are, I think, small steps, baby steps, in the right direction, which
absolutely,
over a period of time will manifest themselves in the way the society has been evolving, and will continue to evolve.
Absolutely.
That's where.
Absolutely. Saugata, I'm going to move on to this one part of our conversation, which is about personalization. So how much is the relevance of personalization in creating content today? How important it is, and how is it going to go way forward?
I believe personalization is at the core of storytelling and content creation, and it has to be. Right? Because what personalization basically does is it accepts and acknowledges the fact that you and I are different people, right? And we may be looking for the same, we may be looking to buy the same product, right? We may be out in the market with a high intent in the same category. But the reason of you wanting to buy that product vis-a-vis me looking for that product can be vastly different.
Right.
What personalization does, it's the marketeer's effort to understand what you want vis-a-vis what I want.
Right.
Accept and acknowledge the fact that we are two different individuals with the same probably purchasing power, and respect that fact through the messaging that is being given.
Right.
So personalization has to be is at the heart of every storytelling. It has been subconscious previously. Now it's more out there, front and center. Secondly, it will only go deeper and sharper as the journey progresses. Right. The watch out though that in our effort to be more personalized, we should not get intrusive.
Yeah.
That's one watch out that every marketeer who's creating communication, who's creating content needs to be mindful of, because the moment you get intrusive, right, that is where the audience loses affinity.
Okay. So by saying you get intrusive, what do you mean? Do you mean by non-permission based marketing, like throwing a newsletter on your email without you being subscribed to it, or is it pushing ads for everything that you just searched on Google? So what does being intrusive mean in this context?
It's more of the latter. See, it's more of the latter because with the DPDP Act coming in, and with GDPR in international markets, and the US laws in California privacy laws and so on and so forth in the US, this whole freedom of throwing ads in somebody's face, whether or not they want to see it, that's been taken away from marketers. Right? So that is not an option anymore. But by being intrusive, I mean that just because I looked for some product on, let's say, Google, searched for some product on Google,
Hmm.
and have forgotten to clear my browser cookies,
Hmm.
doesn't mean that for the next 30 to 45 days, the brands chase me around everywhere I go, and
Right.
basically in the name of retargeting and so remarketing and so on and so forth, all fancy
Right.
terms,
Right.
it disrespects my choice of wanting to consume a piece of content at
Hmm.
my will, at my time, or when I
Hmm.
so desire it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
When that starts happening, that is when actually customers start not liking brands, or
Hmm.
customers start finding brands as sometimes being offensive,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so on. The second thing about being intrusive is the choice of messaging and choice of words,
Hmm.
right? Just
Yeah.
because I'm a brand,
Hmm.
right, and I know that I'm talking to Gen Z or maybe even millennials,
Hmm.
and I have information which tells me that there's a certain lingo that they
Hmm.
follow, right? But it is not in line with my brand's image or my brand's vision or my brand's philosophy or and so on. But
Huh.
I still try to force fit myself into that lingo, right, and try to intrude into their communication and their sphere of communication. I mean,
Right.
I'll be like it's like can't go wrong much wronger than that,
Right. Right.
if that's even a word, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? You
True.
can't do worse than that, right?
Hmm.
So these are these various considerations that a marketeer needs to keep in mind. I
Hmm.
know we are all operating under tremendous pressures. We all have cost pressures, we have time pressures, we have numbers to deliver, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So sometimes people tend to get carried away,
Hmm.
but I guess that's the job of people like us
Hmm.
who have been there, done that, made some mistakes, and hopefully learn from them. That we
Correct.
prevent our teams to make sure that our teams from making those same mistakes,
Hmm.
and continue to enjoy and build upon the credibility that we
Right.
have built for respective brands over the years.
Right, absolutely. Perfect. Saugata, lastly, I mean, this is one area where we cannot avoid when we talk about content, particularly, is the role of AI in creating content or content ideas. So, and there are differences of opinion, right? One person may feel that it is really adding a lot of structure and the way content can be created, in the right format. But at the same time, it's losing the sense of originality and creativity. So, what do you have to say, and how much is AI shaping up the world of content today?
Okay. So let me try and answer the last question that you said. How is
Mhm.
AI shaping up the world of content today, right?
Mhm.
I think the world of content is getting a very definitive shape and form because
Mhm.
of AI coming into picture.
Right.
Uh, what is happening, and why I say that is because, see, what does AI do? AI basically learns from various sources,
Mhm.
right? And basically trains itself to
Hmm.
give responses to questions that we ask them. We
Hmm.
ask it,
Mhm.
right? And it's not only for content; it's a principle in general, right?
Yeah.
So why I said it is getting a lot of structure and form is because previously, let's say if we talk about a client and agency relationship,
Hmm.
right? A client would give a brief to an agency.
Mhm.
The agency would go back, humans would work, put in serious time and effort, and then come back. And many a times the client would realize, oh, the brief that I gave was not what I had in mind in
Hmm.
terms of the answer I was looking for,
Hmm.
right? That would require a lot of back and forths and be time consuming, costly, and so on and so forth.
Right.
With AI, that has actually changed. Now, if
Hmm.
I write a prompt, right, and the answer is instantaneous.
Mhm.
Seeing the answer, I know whether the prompt that I put in
Mhm.
was right or not.
Hmm.
So the prompt is as good as a brief,
Got it.
right?
Got it. Yeah.
So what is happening is that it is
Hmm.
making us far more efficient. It is making us
Mhm.
far more effective in the way we are putting
Mhm.
out content. It is
Mhm.
also helping us think clearly.
Yeah.
Many a times it
True.
happens that I think I know what I want,
Hmm.
but that may not always be true,
True.
right?
True.
With AI, that thing is becoming clearer and more evident, and the
Right.
smarter ones amongst us will actually embrace that thought,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
that reality,
Agreed.
and
Yeah.
get their thinking in order, make it more clearer, bring in more clarity, and so on, right? So
Hmm.
that's where the shape and structure in terms of content creation as a practice is what
Hmm.
AI is driving, I feel,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Uh, To your point about creativity, see, AI is only as good as like in there's a saying you must have heard that an agency is as good as the client.
Yeah, absolutely. Many times.
Similarly, an AI platform is as good as the prompt.
Right. True.
So if I am creative enough to think of solutions for my brand, right, in terms of content, and I'm able to translate that thought process into the prompts that I'm putting into AI, the answers I'll get will be according.
Hmm. Got it. Got it.
So the degree of creativity that AI brings in is equal to the degree of creativity the person who's putting in the prompts has.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of science behind the prompt, and the solution actually is about getting the prompt right.
Absolutely. So there's an entire practice these days that has come up, and it's a very highly paid practice actually, called prompt engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a vertical on its own. Yeah,
it's a vertical on its own. It's a practice on its own, and it basically the whole premise of prompt engineering is what is the right question to ask. See, because with AI, and I'm maybe slightly digressing, right? But within AI, there is also this deep discussion that is happening that since the model is learning from its own database.
Yes.
What happens if the database itself is not robust enough? Does it lead to an inherent failure in the times to come?
True.
Because the model is trained to learn, right? It is trained to pick up cues from the information that it already has. Hence, it's called machine learning. Right?
Correct.
So if the inputs are not valid and the inputs are not good enough, right? There's a huge chance of the model crumbling upon itself in the years to come.
True.
Right? See, simple example. 20 years back, if you were to, not 20, actually 15, 17 years back, if you were to go to Google and put in a search query, more often than not, in the first 2 or 3 results, you would find your expected answer. Right? Today, you go to Google and put in a search query. I mean, the answer is out there for you to see. There are random results which will pop up. Right? Why has that happened? Because Google by itself is an algorithm. But it's a platform, it runs on an algorithm, right? Over the years, we have fed, as users, we have fed so much of junk into that algorithm that now, while they have cleaned it up significantly over the last 3-4 years, they made some significant changes in the algorithm, and now things are again pretty much back out there. But in between, it had so happened that the amount of junk that you would receive as response to on your SERP, it was phenomenal.
Right.
And not in the good way. Right?
Correct.
So that's what I feel is going to happen with AI as well. So the more creative we are, the clearer we are in our thinking, the right questions that we ask the platforms, the better results we'll get and continue to get.
Absolutely. I mean, it's actually, well, when I was listening to you, Saugata, I was also digressing in my thoughts a bit, because this prompting and the right side of, kind of questioning can make so much of a difference to your end result. And this applies to our real life of, even if we have an agency set up or we are running a brand, it is asking the right questions will give you the right result even in your practical life. So if it can apply here, why can it apply in our machine learning or an AI format, right? So I think it's the same principles at the end of the day.
It has to, right? It has to. I mean, even when one is trying to, write a let's say a purpose statement for a brand.
Yeah.
Right? If I am not clear as to why did I launch that product, right? What promise should the brand name that I'm giving the product should carry? What is the customer problem that I'm looking to solve? Or what is the need gap that I'm looking to address? And so on and so forth. If I'm not clear about these things, how will I build a brand?
True.
And if I'm not clear about these things, how will I create the right kind of content, the right kind of messaging to take the brand message forward?
Correct.
So on and so forth. One can go on and on and on.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
These things are, so clarity of thought is something that you can't take away from.
True. Completely agree, Saugata. And I think this entire conversation, which started with just understanding what the basic of content today is about, basics of content is about, and how it's progressed over the years, I think has also given all the listeners, including me, some very, very interesting insight. You gave such amazing examples about the different case studies of the campaigns that were run in the past, and what's the real power of how content can not just shape the brands in the long term, but it can also help in shaping the mindsets of the consumer, which eventually belongs to a society or a country, right, at the end of the day. So I think all I can say and conclude is that content is the future. And obviously, down the line, thanks to AI, we will also see a lot more coming up in the different formats that it's going to evolve from here on. But some principles we shouldn't forget. One is obviously one you spoke about, originality and authenticity, which I think today is getting even more critical, right? Consumers also getting very, very mindful in the way they're paying attention to what the brand is speaking, how the brand is talking, and what messaging they're bringing out. And you can't just fool the consumers today, is as simple as that, right? So I think authenticity, originality, and you said, let's not be intrusive. We can believe in the area of personalization, but let's not get intrusive is very, very important for every marketer and business owners to understand. So thanks so much, Saugata. Thanks for being a part of Brewing Talks. As I said, it was a truly, truly insightful conversation that I had with you.
Thank you so much, Madhurika. Pleasure being here.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Brewing Talks. Thank you for tuning in. Sign up and subscribe to Brewing Talks on eplog.media. You can also listen to this podcast on Ghana, Spotify, Apple, and Google. Catch up soon with our very next episode as I stir up marketing stories only on Brewing Talks.